very well. Look good in African Prince this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tukwebaza olwa kaseera that you keep on fixing to come through and help the people out there. We don't take it for granted at all. Yeah, so the viewers are waiting for you. Good morning and
good morning, viewers. How are you? Thank you for following. Thank you for the views. Thank you for the positive comments. I come back here again with a continuation. May you be blessed.
Amen. Okay, last week out, one of the things that disturbed me a great deal was the men that you talked about that go ahead and they're okay, they rape their own children. That beat my mind. I didn't understand, but we got out of that. We got to a point where last time Watugamanti, at the moment when you had gone back to ministry, is when Mr. Bengan actually realized after that point, wait a minute, this girl has been single all this while. She has not been engaged. And it looks like a veil, scales had gotten off your face, and now you were noticed again. So what did you feel in that moment, or before he came through, before he said anything? The veil, and did you even realize nti yaliko oba all of that? How did it begin? Okutuka before okuyingira okwe veil eyo.
Oh, like I told you, my boss's daughter gave me a CD and it was talking about soul ties, breaking soul ties. So I was breaking that, so like from day one we were breaking the generational curses. So for them it was a constant thing. But this girl coming in randomly to give me a CD about soul ties was something that was a divine appointment, because I was asking God all these things, and then she's like randomly, she had never given me a CD. She's like, you're born again, you like these things, read through, listen through, you know. And I listened through, and it's talking about soul ties. So that week I was fasting, breaking soul ties. What connects me to the father of my child, and like I want to be free, you know. Yes, and in that week, that's when actually I met Mr. Bayingana. But how the circumstances under which I met him were like, I was planning to leave the country because I was in a society whereby everybody from left, right, center, they're asking you, when are you getting married? Who is the father? When is he coming through? So the whole thing was too much for me, that I felt I should have new beginnings.
Out of the country? Yes,
where I would go out of the country. My pastor's wife, I talked to her because she had relatives out of the country, and she was very willing to help me travel and work. But she told me, you need money, you need this kind of money, then I'll do the helping out and you'll go out there.
You wanted a whole new fresh beginning out of this country, out of the pressures, out
where
of...
nobody knows me. You know, like you're getting to heal, and each time someone comes repetitively reminding you of where is he, those things. So I had to start, me had healed, but that remembrance kind of pissed me
usually
off.
Do you think, had you gotten a sign like from the Lord in Katibane again, or it was just out of the pressures?
But like the Bible says, he directs our steps. At times he will not speak, but he just directs your steps. You just begin having desires. Remember, the Bible says it's him that gives us the desires of our hearts.
That's right.
So the desire just came from the blood. Never thought of one day getting out of the country. So from the blues, I'm like, what should I do to avoid all this? Should I change a church? No, this is my church. Should I change where? Yes.
In that point, where I've been, everyone has been throwing stones at me, saying, you know,
that's not the solution. So then I'm like, can I change where I stay, because it's also a big deal. People asking you around, Anita, a woman, who is he? So me coming up with the idea, my pastor's wife giving me a thumbs up, I'm like, okay, so I can travel abroad. I had my money placed in different things I was doing. So in my heart, I'm like, I have the money. I'm just waiting for the time she sets, and then I travel. But 1 month prior to my traveling, the money
you had gotten the money?
I had the money.
And the tickets and all those things?
I was processing those ones. Someone was helping me, but the money, you know, when you have money, you can do anything.
That's right.
Yes, so I had the money to actually do everything. I was, you know, doing this and that, preparing myself. So, as I was in this process of preparing to go, the money I had, Zagenda Zibla, like it used to disappear. maybe you've put it here, you get a loss, it gets stolen. I told you I used to have broilers and layers. They began dying. So the money kept on reducing. So when it began reducing, I realized I need someone to actually borrow me money to top up with what I had. I talked to friends, they promised, but they weren't fulfilling. There was even a friend I was very sure would give me some
that
good
money. That
money.
was getting lost from the house, from your house, from
my business.
From your business.
Yes, I used to have some mobile money businesses. They tell you, but they've stolen, a thief came and stole. They conned us. So kind of the money, but I think it was intentional for God to actually take away the money which I had, so that it draws me to the man I was supposed to meet. So the money kept reducing. The friends I trusted to give me money, they disappointed me. I was shocked. They're like, no, I don't have salary. This came up. So time came when I had little, almost 20% of the money. 20 from 100 to 20. That's how terrible it was. So I got desperate. There is this girl in church I talked to. She's a mature lady. So I'm like, can you borrow me some money? I want to go and work. I'll give you back the money when I come back. She tells me I don't have. But there is this guy in charge called Mr. Baingana. I think he can help. He's always good at helping people. Each time someone has a problem, really he stands in. Why don't you talk to him? I'm like, what? You know, he was this kind of guy, a bit mature, but you just pass in the corridors of church and you're like, hello, praise God, then you bypass. So and even now it's not to talk much, but you can't just go to a stranger and tell them, borrow me money. I think I wanted over 5 million.
Oh,
yes.
That was much.
So you can't just go to a stranger and tell them.
Which year was that?
Do I remember years? I'm not good at years.
Does he remember? You can whisper to us. Remember which year that was?
You remember?
You can, but like 5 million is what you wanted.
Yes,
at that
but
time.
I think something like 5. I don't want to lie. So yes, so this lady tells me go to Mr. Baingana. I'm like, that guy, I rarely speak to him. How do I even begin telling him yes? Now I thought I'm a stranger to him because we just see in church, each other in church, and we're even distant. I'm like, how do I even begin telling this guy? This stranger. By the way, surprisingly, where I used to work from, the opposite road to my office was the road that leads to Mr. Baingana's home. Can you imagine how God positions things? So she tells me, Mr. Baingana, I'm like, no, I can't. So I spent 3 days saying I can't go to that guy, and I opted for other options. And there is one friend of mine that I was very sure he would give me the money. My dear, something happened to his things, and he couldn't give me the money. Now I'm on the wall, I'm stuck. Now that desperate move is like, okay, though I'm afraid to talk to this guy, this is the only way out. Days are running out, I need the money.
Yeah.
I called this guy during the, I'm like, I looked for his number. I first looked for his number. I failed to get it from the people who could help me. So, but I was sitting in my office like this, and I'm like, this guy, the way to his home is that side, and his own home was open to many church members because he was a single dad, and he had people from church going there to take care of the kids.
Yeah.
So people could always I could see people frequenting that road. I had never gone there myself. So, but the person, the caretaker who was taking care of the kid was a worship team member, and I knew her and we were friends. But I was calling her phone, she wasn't picking. So I'm like, okay, let me go and meet her there because he may not be there, and she gives me the number. So I just got out of office like this, went in that car road that goes to his home. So I knock, and this girl comes out. I'm like, one night, do you have Mr. Baingana's number? She's like, yeah. She gave me the number because, of course, he wasn't home. It was working time around 2. So I called this guy. I'm like, what was good afternoon, sir? He's like, good afternoon, how are you? I'm like, I'm fine. I'm like, this is Sandra. So before I could even finish, he's like, I'm sorry, I'm a bit busy. Can I call you later? I'm like, okay, sir. You get it? I will not call this guy. So I'm like, thank God he didn't even talk, because I was really scared to talk to him. This was a stranger, and you want 5 million?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, thank God he even said he's busy. I will not call him. I had resolved not to call him. Now, as I'm resolving not to call this guy, it reaches 8 in the night. Now, the guy calls me, and I'm like, okay. I first refused to pick, then he called again. I'm like, hey, this guy remembers. I picked the phone. He's like, yes, you called me a bit, something at around 2, something, I was busy. Yeah, you said you're who? I'm like, I'm Sandra. It's like, Sandra who? I'm like, Sandra from church. Sandra. I'm like, Mama Zoe. You know, like people knew me as Mama Zoe. So it's like the interpreter. Oh, the interpreter.
Oh, you used to interpret as
yes,
well
in church. The interpreter. Okay, how are you? I'm like, I'm fine, sir. I call him sir. I'm like, fine, sir. Sir, I have a problem. So he's like, okay, I'm listening. I'm like, okay, you know, I'm planning to leave the country. Dr. Gillian is helping me go out of the country to work. But I've been having my money and I've been losing it. So I've reached a point where I don't have money and I need someone to support me.
Okay.
Could you borrow me money and I'll help you and give it back to you when I come back? He's like, you want to go out of the country? I'm like, yes. He's like, but people, the youth of today, the problem they have, they want quick money.
Yeah.
You don't want to give it time. From experience and from what I've built myself from to where I am, I can tell you, you can make it here in Uganda.
That's what he told you?
Yes. It's like going out of the country is not the best of options. You can make it here in Uganda. I know you can make it here. So why do you want to go abroad? So I'm like, now I began becoming less tense a bit because I'm like, okay, he's even counseling me. So I'm like, okay, I think now I can really open up and talk. I'm like, okay, the issue is, I know I could make it here in Uganda, but I have siblings I pay fees for at the university. I have a baby. I'm one person who wants my child to have everything and all that. And with this salary I'm earning, I don't feel I will make it like all the bills, my sister's tuition and everything. So I feel I need to go out there at least for like 5 years and then come back. I just want to go for a minute and then come back. He's like, I just don't think it's a good idea. So I'm like, look here, I'm a single mom. I need to work for my baby. He's like, you a single mom? I'm like, yes. That's what kind of the phone went off. I'm like, okay, maybe his airtime. Still, I was like, I will not call. The guy calls up again after like almost 5 minutes. He's like, you said you were a single mom? I'm like, yes. He's like, okay. I didn't know you were a single mom. I'm like, yeah, I'm a single mom. Me and that guy, we are apart, so I take care of my baby, so that's why I have to work. He's like, okay, but you could hear in his voice, he's shocked I'm a single mom. So he's like, okay, so you said you want how much? I'm like, 5M. He's like, okay. I'm expecting some money, but right now I also have things I'm sorting out, but I think in 2 weeks' time I can get you that money. He was that guy. He could give you the money, according from what I used to hear people saying.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, I'll give you the money in 2 weeks. Right now I have things I'm doing. I have some loan to pay, so I want to clear this loan. Then after clearing this loan, in 2 weeks' time, I expect payments in my company, and I'll give you the money. And you'll go, you'll pay me when you come back. I'm like, oh my God, thank you, sir. I'm so humbled. I was happy. I'm like, who gives you this money? I'm like, now, the following morning, he told me, you said you have some money that you want to top up with, right? I'm like, yes. So he's like I told you, I have a loan I have to finish this week. I have 4 days to clear it. I'm missing some money to top up, and the one I'm expecting to be paid is going to take long. So can you borrow me that money? I top up, I clear this loan. Then in 2 weeks, I just give back everything. I'm like, well, it's okay. In the morning, I went to the bank, I got the money, I sent it to him. So I called mommy. I'm like, oh, mommy, thank you for your prayers. This guy is going to borrow me money. I'm so humbled. She's like, okay, that's good. I'm like, okay. Now, that week...
Your mom was also in support of you going out of the country.
Yes, she knew all my fears. So, that week on Sunday, early morning, I'm going to church. This guy, Mr. Bengana, calls me. And he's like, are you coming to church today? I'm like, yes. He's like, can we meet over for lunch at around 4? I'm like, okay. Now, me, when he told me, can we meet over for lunch, my thing was like, this guy has gotten money. I called mommy. Mommy was my friend. I'm like, mommy, this gentleman has called me, telling me to meet him over lunch. I think he's going to give me money. Mommy, pray for me. She made like a prayer over the phone. I'm like, thank you, mommy. We need this man. I need to go. I reach over for lunch with this guy, and this guy is a bit shy, and I'm also a bit shy. So,
Sandra,
I'm shy. No, let me tell you, recently, seriously, I used to be the shy type.
Really?
Ask people around.
With the speed Joyo Geze.
Yeah, I used to. Let me tell you, marriage brings out the best in you when you marry right.
Yeah.
Before that, I used to be that.
That is important. When you marry right, marriage takes out most of those.
So when you get a husband that gives you the confidence and supports you and tells you you're great, you all these gifts get out of you.
So here you meet, both shy.
Yes, so we meet and this guy is like, I think you know me. I'm like, yes, of course I know you. He's like, okay, last time you called me and we talked, but there is something that captivated my mind. I'm like, okay, what's that? I was shocked to hear you're single. He's like, do you know that all along I thought you're engaged to the father of your child? I'm like, who told you? People at church. Who told them? I don't know. I'm like, okay. No, I wasn't engaged. I was back and forth with him. So I told him about my story. He told me about his story. So I wasn't engaged. That's why I want to go out and work for my baby. He's like, okay, yeah, but I can talk to you about something else. I'm like, okay. Remember, I came expecting money.
Money.
I'm like, okay. He's like, he's like, look here. The very first day I fell in love with you was the day I saw you on the pulpit, standing up telling the whole church that I'm pregnant and I've messed up, so please forgive me. I'm like, what was to love about that? He's like, I love honest people, like people who are open and honest. He's like, you were a young girl, you could have run out of church and give birth and come back. Yeah. But me seeing you at your age standing up to take accountability for your actions, I was like, wow, this is the kind of woman I want. But of course I knew by the time you're pregnant there is a man in your life, but I admired that. I'm like, wow. So along the way, as I wasn't seeing you getting married.
What did that statement, what effect did it have on you when it said, the day I fell in love with you is the day you took account for your what did that cause? In what
me I wasn't even clicking anything. Boba he's saying anything. Me I was like, okay, there is beauty in what seems ugly. I'm like, wow, God, really? In that moment, just someone can fall. My mind was the money that I wanted because I was running out of time. So I thought this guy is going to get in his pockets and hey, ngambe hallelujah. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, why did you fall in love? So he told me that. I'm like, oh, okay. Good to hear. So, so he's like, and all along, after like a period of 1 year, I was like, but this girl is not married to anybody. Can I try? And he told me, ask some gentleman in church, that girl, what is that? What is wrong with her? Is she engaged? Do you think she's someone I can try? And this guy told her, no, that girl is engaged to the father of her child. But the guy, I don't know. That is the spiritual veil. It marks you married, and you're not married actually. I'm like, who told that guy I'm married? I don't know. Because I never told anybody that something like that. Now, he's like, all along for almost 2 years, I've been there and I'm looking at you. I like the way you carry yourself. I like the way you do ABCD. And I'm like, this girl is engaged. Each time he tries, they tell him she's engaged. So he keeps going off. But the day he heard from the horse's mouth that I'm actually not engaged to any man, like I'm free, he was shocked. And that's why he went off phone at first when we were talking to just take it in. But then in his heart, he's like, this girl is engaged all along.
Next week we're having here Mr. Bang, I'm telling you. And he will tell us why he switched off the phone in that minute. Was it to say, yes? Yes.
No, he was shocked. He was shocked.
And there's that shock, but there's woman no gamba. What? Oh my goodness, no camera come no gamba come
away. He will tell us, Mr. Bayan will tell us. But according to his story, he told me, he's like, what? All along this girl has been free like this and I even don't know, and they tell me she's engaged. But he told me in his heart he resolved, this week, I'll have to tell this girl that I've always been interested in her, because should I even waste any time, someone can snatch her.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
So that's why he came to talk to me on that lunch date. So he was telling me, so I'm here to tell you that when you told me that, I told myself this week tegwa ngasi because it was a Monday and then we're meeting on Sunday. So I'm like, okay, so what are you saying in summary? In summary is, I'm interested in you. But I'm not saying you should stop going to you should cancel your plans. I can wait for you if you're interested. You can go, you just have to tell me the duration. I can wait for you, but I'm surprised you've been single all these years. I'm like, Now me, I was shocked. I'm like, what? I've come for money. Someone is diversifying me. But these people who channel your destiny the wrong way. That's the mindset. I'm like, I want to move out of this whole thing. This guy is trying to tell me funny things. And me, I had this thing. I had these things. When you're going to date someone, of course, you don't know whether it will work out or not.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I wasn't, I think, ready for a relationship that soon. So I told him, give me time, I think about it. But I left that. Yes. But I know. But I left that meeting a bit disappointed. And I even called mommy. I'm like, mommy, mommy, Nagamba, what? But is he promising he'll give you the money, you borrow you the money? I'm like, he said, let's wait. So we move on. But that day when I went back to sleep, as I woke up to pray, something was trying to remind me the prayers I've been making to God. Like, Sandra, you've been praying God to bring you a husband, a good father to your child. You want to settle down. You want him to take away the shame. So it's like something is coming and not even giving it a thought. So that night I didn't pray. I just began meditating on the words he was telling me. And I'm like, okay. So now I'm like, God, what is this? You know, I had to travel. What is this? You know, I need you to help me discern through this. Is he the man? Like, I wanted to know. So I gave him 2 weeks to wait for me. But as I'm asking God.
Wait for your answer.
Yes. As I'm asking God to give me an answer. 2 days after that, I get a toothache. The toothache. That whole night I didn't sleep. And I didn't have money, because I didn't even given him my money to borrow him my money.
To top up on his.
Yes, I didn't have money. So I have to remove my tooth. The whole night I didn't sleep, but around in the morning it stopped a bit, but I knew it would come back. You know those toothaches. Now, at around 10, this guy calls me. Okay, on that date, he told me, okay, as I'm waiting for you to give me feedback, can I call you once in a while to say hi? I'm like, it's okay. You can. But I need just a friendly hi. Now, I'm in the morning, I'm still sleeping. I didn't go to work. This guy calls me, Mr. Bangana calls me and is like, good morning. I'm like, good morning, how are you? He's like, how are you? I'm like, I'm not fine. He's like, why? I'm like, my tooth was paining the whole night. So I'm still in bed. Oh, so you didn't go to work? I'm like, yes. The guy went off. I thought he's just checking on me and that's it. And I didn't even tell him anything. Mom, I don't have money. I knew that was my personal problem. I was planning to call some friends to send me some money. But Mr. Bangana was the type of man, when you go on a date with him, he escorts you back to your place, up to the gate. He does not enter. Now to Sapaka ku gate. That is him. He's like, and I let you travel alone. I have to take responsibility.
Who are you dating out there? And when you go on a date, you know, babe, bye, see you next time.
Because I remember when we were done, okay, we're taking the same route, but I knew somehow we took our taxi again. I'm like, you're following me. He's like, when I take a girl out on a date, I do not let them take their direction. Even if it's night time. If it's night time, I have to ensure you reach safely.
There's another gentleman Bamuita Dr. Naboth. Yene boba Bobanga what the ride motoka ye. There's no way what jokule kanti wamwe waliri mbombo katitambulo tuka akugeta and then ensuring until yingide.
Katina, surprisingly, me, I had issues with my landlord. You know, this was this kind of guy. You pay your rent in full, here he put power for you. He cuts off the power. He puts those red wires in power and they cut you power. So I used to have issues with him. So he also used to disorganize me. He knew I feared dogs a lot, so he could release these dogs in the whole compound, knowing I would fear to enter. Now this gentleman says, I don't take girls on dates and I let them go alone. Something can happen to you. So let me reach you up to the gate, then I go back. I'm like, okay. So this guy takes me up to the gate as we are chatting. We reach the gate. He's like, getting. I'm like, the dogs are there. Oh my God, I fear dogs. He's like, what? I'm like, I fear dogs from childhood. I used to fear dogs. Now, He's like, why don't you call them to tie them? I'm like, the landlord comes back at around 9. He's like, okay. This guy risked and entered the gate. He's a stranger to those dogs, but he entered. He's like, now I'm going to throw a stone. They'll run, and then for you run, you enter your house. So he entered the gate. I think. You know? Yes. So as a stranger, he entered the gate. He began throwing stones. The first time he threw a stone, I refused to enter. He's like, enter, the dogs are good. I'm like, no, I'm fearing they may come back. He's like, no, enter. I'm going to throw again. He threw the second time. I took off up to my house.
So yes. And stuff.
So he's like, okay, bye. I'm like, bye, thank you, sir. You're welcome. He went. Now when I told him I have a toothache, he knew my home. So I sleep off after talking to him. I sleep off. My friends were in a meeting that day, so I wouldn't call them. So I'm like, at around midday, I'll call them. I'm in my bed sleeping. Now Mr. Bangana calls again. I think after 30 minutes, they were in a bank with my pastor, opening up a bank account for some section of the ministry. This guy, when I told him I have a toothache, he left them in the bank to come and take me to hospital. Katimi, I'm in my bed sleeping. I get a call again. I pick him up. He's like, I'm at your gate. I'm like, my house was messed up. So I'm like, why are you at the gate? He's like, you told me you have a toothache. Have you gone to it? I'm like, no. He's like, I'm here to take you to hospital. I'm like, I get out of the house. I see him. I'm like, come in. I had a maid and a baby there, so he came and sat. He's like, put on, I take you to hospital. I'm like, this guy. Okay, but then I'm like, I don't have money.
For the bills of the hospital.
This guy takes me to hospital. We go. We reach the hospital. I fear to uproot a tooth because I last did it in P7 and it was so painful. Dr. Yampa MP.
Hey.
So I remembered that pain. I used to fear removing my teeth. So, at the reception, the doctor is trying to put machines in my mouth. I'm screaming, woo-wee, mommy. Oh, so the guy comes and is like, what is happening? Doctor tells him she's afraid. He asked the doctor, can I come and help? Can I come and console her? Doctor is like, it's okay. So this guy comes in and he sits next to me on a chair where I was sleeping. And he's like, I know at times it's painful, but I don't think it will be painful. Can I hold your hand and help you go through this? I'm like, okay. This guy held my hand. And I went back. The guy put the thing in. And for some reason, I didn't hear anything. And he's like, Sandra, I'm done. I'm like, You get it? But that moment when
you were also lost in the moment.
No, I wasn't even concerned about Mr. Bangana holding my hands. My issue was the pain. I'm afraid of the pain. So when I went back home.
And what did that? Because if you say previously you were feeling pain, and now here he is holding your hand, and the dentist is removing the tooth, and you didn't realize what took the pain away in that moment.
No, I don't know. When he held my hand, I felt safe, safe, and the mere fact I didn't even hear the pain. I'm like, okay, wow. But when I went back home, because they again escorted me back home, and he stopped at the gate and he went back. I'm asking God. Now that night I sat, I'm like, I see these things in movies. These things.
Now reality is happening.
If a guy has to help you out, maybe he can even just send you, and he's like, go to hospital, and then he checks on you, are you okay? So me, a guy coming all the way was kind of, okay.
It spoke volumes.
And I'm like, wow. So I continued asking God. Now, I told you I had issues with my landlord. Oh, God, that guy could become an issue at times. His weakness was that you give him rent, he doesn't put electricity, So I had issues with the landlord. So I told him that month, I'm not paying you rent until you put back my power. This guy is like, you're joking, I'll need my money. I'm like, no, put the rent. Put the power back. So 1 week after, as this gentleman is waiting for my approval, he calls me again one day. I'm at work. Second week, he's like, "How are you?" I'm like, "I'm fine." And he's like, "But you don't sound fine." I'm like, this landlord of mine just stresses me. I told you about my landlord stressing me. He's like, "Yeah, you talked about it some time back. I didn't know it was this serious." Now I narrate the whole story to him. I'm like, this guy came at night and he abused me with his wife. He's telling me, if you don't give us our money, leave our house. What? I even took us to police, by the way. I'm like, look here, police, this is by intimidating me. I've paid my full rent.
They ganged up with the wife.
With the wife. So I even took
And you had paid rent for...
every time I was there, I could pay my rent early. That month, I was like, I'm not giving you rent until you put back my power. I've been in a house without power for a month. So I'm at police, I'm taking him to police. So when I told him it even reached the point of us going to police, he's like, but Sandra, you don't need to go through such kind of hassle. If he has refused to give you, to put power for you, just move out of the house. I'm like, I don't know. He's like, no, don't fight such stupid battles. Just, I think he doesn't understand. You cannot reason with him. Your mindset are different. So you can't reason on the same level. Just ignore, just move out of that house. I'm like, I'll think about it. So that evening, he calls me, he's like, where are you? I'm like, at office. He's like, come, we look for a house. I'm like, this guy. I haven't even said anything to him. So we go with this guy, we look for a house. But me, I'm used to paying houses of 250, 200. This guy is getting in houses of money 500, this money 1M, this money 800. In my heart, I'm like, this guy may be thinking I earn a lot of money. With my salary, I can't finish my salary on this house. When I will get to the house, we look around for several houses. We come back. So I'm like, these houses are very expensive. But like, but you need a safe place. Yeah. Now me and this guy, we don't connect. He thinks a different way, I think a different way, but I don't want even to argue with him. I don't even have money to begin renting. I can't even travel out of the country. Who shifts when you're traveling out of the country?
Nobody.
I'm like, please. So I didn't give it a lot of attention. The following day, he calls me. Come, we go and pay the house. I'm like, we pay the house.
Already?
But I told him, look here, I'm traveling out of the country. And it's like, but you have a child with you, because you told me you want your child to be around here in Kampala. So but I'm like, but my time of traveling was kind of pushed ahead for 2 months because available. So you're going to wait for 2 months.
But it would be Easter, Christmas.
I think it was about Easter. Towards Christmas. We have to first wait because you'll not get the job, so you have to wait. So it was a bit pushed. Naila still I'm traveling. So this guy,
when processing,
yes, we are still in the process. So he tells me, come, we pay. My job was flexible, so I could easily run out of office. So I'm like, let me follow this guy and see what he's doing. Am I the one going to pay? Are we going to reach there? And he says,
let us send.
I didn't know what it was. I was shocked. I'm like, what is this? So I go with this guy. I meet him somewhere. We go to one of the houses that was 500. Very good house. 2 bedrooms, self-contained kitchen, sitting room, bathrooms, 1 bathroom. So we go with him. The guy pays cash. And I'm like, okay, something is happening here. I haven't given him a feedback. Something is happening here. So he pays. I'm like, but why do you pay before even I say yes to you? He's like, no, helping out does not mean you should be my girlfriend to help you out. I can help out if I can because you're struggling. I'm like, oh, thank you, sir. It's like, you're welcome. Now he's like, now stop stressing yourself with that landlord. The people are bad. Someone can do something to just get out of that drama and move out. You're better than that. So I'm like, okay, thank you. I'll move out. Now, the following day, he calls me at around 9. What plans do you have for moving out? I'm like, I'm working. So at around 5 after work, I'll go and shift my things. This guy went and brought a car. He went and brought a vehicle. A truck. And he shifted out my things together with my maid. My baby. Yeah, together with my maid and the baby. The baby hadn't left to go to mommy. With my baby, and he shifted them. But I think he was calling me and my phone wasn't going through. So me, the maid calls me. The maid was a Mnyanko. I don't know the Mnyanko. She's like, Auntie, and then your money, no. Like speaking Mnyanko, trying to tell me, Auntie, and then you banga nunji, something like that. Now no, like Olio Musaja, Olio Kokutwa Mudwaliro, Azana Chimaka 21. I'm like, this guy shifted my things before me knowing. So later he called. I think my phone wasn't going through it. So this guy later calls and he tells me, I've shifted your things. I didn't want to talk anything much because I was still in shock. I'm like, okay, thank you. I finished office, I went back home, I looked, they offloaded my things and put them in the house, and I'm like, okay. I went back to God seriously. I'm like, God, I'm a single mom. I don't want these things of giving birth from one man to another. So me, I'm not even excited by this, much as it's speaking something, but I don't want to make a mistake. I want to know, is this the man? And I don't want to miss out on my seasons. So help me. I don't want to look at what he's doing, because we see men who do these things.
Yeah.
The father of my child, before he made me his girlfriend, he did all sorts of things to sweep me off. So me, the issue wasn't even this. You know, when you're working and you can earn some money, the house cannot move you too much. Though it shakes you that, okay, someone can get out of their way to actually do it. But if I want, I can rent that house. I'm just trying to save, not to waste that money. Now, I asked God, I'm like, okay, God, I need to know. Now, that Sunday when I was asking God, I need to know, God sends over a pastor who was preaching the same message that I wanted to hear. It was a confirmation of my prayers. You get it? And when that guy spoke, it's like he was speaking to me. He was a visiting pastor, by the way. I'm like, wow. So when I left church that day, I called him. I think he didn't pray. I called him and I'm like, look here, I'll try to give this a try. It's like, wow, okay. But in me, I knew I would go abroad still. We shall date when I'm abroad. That was my mind.
Long distance.
Long distance relationship. Because me, I know when you date a guy, you date almost for 1 year, 2 years. Me, I dated for 6.5 years before I became a single mom. So I knew there is no quick relationship to engagement. So I need to take time. So I'll go and work. We date off online. Now, this guy tells me, wow, thank you for accepting me. Can we meet over for dinner at around 8? My dear, I transport myself, I go for dinner. I meet this guy. This guy tells me, I told God, when I used to pray, I used to tell God, I'm a single mom. I don't want time wasters. I don't want rapists. I want straight men who can be good husbands to my a good husband and a good father to my child. My issue was the child. Once I come last, but my issue was the child. I need a man who will love me with my child. Now, we go for the date at 8. I reached on that date, and
that also speaks wonderful stuff.
Yes,
Baba,
and it was
keeping the time.
You know, and it was 8. So I reached. He's like, you're welcome. Thank you. I made my order, and he's like, thank you for accepting my proposal. I'm like, you're welcome. And then he started properly like this, and he's like, my dear. I'm like, yes. Auntie, you see me, I'm a mature man. I'm like, yes. So it means I don't have time to play around. I'm like, yes. I hope you also don't want to play around. I'm like, I don't want to play around. I'm a serious girl. So he's like, okay, so if you're a serious girl, I want us to date intentionally.
Yeah.
That was the first time I was listening to that statement. I see this in movies. So the guy is telling me, I want us to date intentionally. I'm like, okay, how intentionally? It's like you said, you want to travel abroad? I'm like, yes. He's like, okay, I want us to date intentionally. Let's determine for how long are we dating to marriage. Because I've wasted a lot of time. Girls have come, I want a serious girl. And I see seriousness in you. I don't think you have time to play. I'm like, I don't have time to play.
Wow.
So he's like, look here, can we date intentionally? Can we determine our dating period? How long do you think we can date? But then I didn't want to suggest. I'm like, that is the place of a man to suggest. So he's like, is 3 months okay?
What?
I'm like, 3 months? No. So I pushed up to 5 months. He's like, okay, 5 months. Now, 5 months. Can we set today?
The date.
The date for the kuchala, for the wedding, for the kwanjula.
What?
I remember telling him, really?
Sandro Manyaba and engage Vatawana never Gaya in a direction.
I know. Guy not dating her for 6 years.
And Tabugamba exactly what they want. They've never told you anything. Now, someone coming through with a statement of let us date intentionally.
So I'm shocked. I'm all sorts of emotions. I'm like, okay, this is something on another level.
Yeah.
And I remember telling him, can I think about it? And meanwhile, I want to talk to mommy. Era sama mane ngenda mutoyi.
Oro sente sawo zuchaziro tochazirozaako kiri awo.
Sente nze ngenda bweru. My days were postponed for 2 months ahead because of those events. But it was Easter. I get to the toilet. I'm like, Mommy, can you imagine this guy has told me this? Mommy is like, my daughter, be careful. Such men could be HIV positive.
Yeah,
which kind of speed is that? She's like, we first think through things through. Now, but remember, Mugambi nzikiriza to date you. I went back to my prayer closet.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, God speaks. When I went back to pray and I was opening the Bible, somehow my Bible did this, and I opened a scripture. And that was Isaiah 30, I think, about 21, where it says that whether you go left or right, whether you go left or right.
The presenter is lost of words. Indeed.
Yes. You know, so the scripture says, whether you go left or right, you'll hear a voice behind you telling you, this is the direction, take it.
Yeah.
So that got me a bit up spiritual. I'm like, okay, so much as that means, you know, when God is giving you direction, you either go left or right. You can't go both.
That's right.
So I think God was trying to tell me, whether you go left or right, there will be a voice behind you to tell you that this is the way or this is the way, take it. So it kind of gave me confirmation into I'm with God. Now I began going to my pastor's wife. Mommy, this guy in church called so and so. She's like, he's a good man. I go to pastor, this guy in church called so and so. He's like, he's a good man. I go to some two ladies, he's a good man. But my friends were all negative. They were like, Abichi. We begin dating. We begin dating towards the day that leads. But then I'm telling God, I want this to be the right man. I have a daughter. You need to protect my child. I don't want to. Much as the other pastor preached and I got the message, it was mine, but still there is this other part. I think 2 months down the road, this guy tells me, do you have time over the weekend? I'm like, yes. It's like, come and we go somewhere. So he takes me to the house he was building. He had boys. On the boys, he didn't have a girl. Now Zoe was going to be his first girl, and he fell in love with her from day one.
Oh.
So he's like, now I have a girl. I want my girl to have the best bedroom in this house.
Wow.
And you know girls' bedrooms, girls, they like this and that. This guy broke a wall to make an extension for Zoe's bedroom.
What did that speak to you?
I went home and cried.
I know.
I told God, what? Such men exist. I think that was one of the biggest points, because my baby had to come first. Maybe before you go through me, you have to pass through my baby. And he didn't know that. You get it? So I think God knew my soft spot, and he wanted to come out significantly and tell me, you'll hear a voice. So me, when that issue came up, I'm like, that is the voice.
Wow.
Let me tell you, when that guy told me he's breaking that wall to extend a wall and get a bedroom that suits Zoe, that was it. I think it was 2 months down the road, I gave in my whole self to this function, and I prepared. And then he was expecting the money. The money later came up and he's like, can we meet? I'm like, yes. He's like, it's me who visits on the introduction. I'm like, yes. He's like, make a budget. You tell me, I get you the money.
Budget
So I'm like, we need to paint the house. We need to buy sofas. We need to buy food. We need to buy things. I gave him the budget. He told me, can we meet over lunch? We met over lunch. The guy got money. I'd never carried that money in my life. And I remember when he gave me that money and I was going to Centenary Bank to bank it, I moved and I'm like, let nobody steal this money. And I went and banked that money. I sent home money. They began working through the money. We had organized a Kwanjula, I think, to be 3 months after. Then the wedding was going to be on a Friday. The Kwanjula is going to be on a Friday, the wedding on Saturday. No wasting time.
Yeah. No wasting time.
And somehow I even cancelled that. I told God, what am I looking for? I've been looking for a soulmate, someone who can be a good father to my baby. I can work hard here in Uganda and make it, so I'm not going abroad. The day I told you I'm not going abroad, he broke down and cried.
Oh.
He's like, wow, you get it? So I settled in, walking down the aisle. Before you know it, I'm the most happily married woman on earth planet. And when I got married, more things began happening. This guy let me into his finances. Like, I knew what he earns 100%. He made me a signatory to his account. Like, he let me in wholesale. And during dating, he made me sign some contracts with him. The contracts he was signing with his clients, he used to call me, come, we sign, you're my wife to be. And I can't sign contracts with him. But the shocker in the first year of marriage was when he bought a car. Now, when he was planning to buy a car, he told me, go to the driving school. I'm like, okay, driving school. So I thought he knows how to drive, so he's telling me to also learn how to drive. So I taught myself how to drive a car in 1 week. I got the theory. Sharp. Yes, I got the theory on YouTube. I asked for a friend to give me their car. I went in those roads, those dust roads. I put the theory into practical. Ooh, I'm like, I know. I tried a driving school once. It pissed me off. You're driving. I was like, Tokona, come out. Collaborate. Me, I hate that kind of thing. So I'm like, what is this? Who drives? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, no. I can teach myself how to drive. So I went on YouTube, I got the theory, road signs, what does it mean? Then I got practical. This is one day, I knew how to drive. In me, I knew how to drive. Now the car was coming, it went to the bond. Now we are married. This guy tells me, come we go to the bond. We go to the bond. Actually, he was there before me. He's like, come to the bond, I'm at the bond. I'm like, okay. So I go to the bond. We went to the bond, and he paid the number plate. Number plate very tight. So he's like, drive. I'm like, this guy wants to test my driving. Let me tell you, I sat in that car for the second time of driving, and I drove that car up to home.
What?
And in me, I'm like, wow.
And he was seated in.
He was seated besides me. So in me, I'm like, I can't testing. We reach home, we park the car. The following day, I had to go to school, to office. So me, I'm a traditional woman. I come from Africa. In Africa, it's him that drives the car. Until he gets money to buy a second car, my dear. He will be the one driving the what?
The car.
So that was very deep in me. I didn't even need anybody to tell me. So we parked the car. I'm like, wow, we got a car. In the morning, since for him he's self-employed, he goes to office anytime. Me, I used to leave earlier. Now, I do what? In the morning, I'm saying, honey, I'm done, so I'm going to work. See you. I left him taking tea. He's like, you've left the car keys. I'm like, the car keys? You're supposed to drive the car. Maybe on Sule office to get. He's like, no, I cannot drive a car when my wife is in a taxi. So this is your car. You're going to first drive this car until I can afford to buy mine. Those men
still exist.
They do exist. Now, I'm like, what? Actually, I cried. He's like, no, you're my wife. I cannot drive a car when you are in a taxi.
My God.
So this is your car. I will get mine. Let me tell you, I used to drive this guy and drop him at the stage. And he bought the car. I'm like, honey, bye. He's like, bye. I drive.
Nalinya tax.
Nalinya tax.
Omusajja omufirika.
Yes.
Yakutwala ku boda walina gama boda oyo mutuse bulungi.